Before he became a legend, he was a child left in the wilderness. Before he wrote the Book of Five Rings, he had no home, no master, only the will to survive. Miyamoto Musashi was born in 1584, a time of chaos and bloodshed. Japan was torn, apart by warlords fighting for power, and his fate was sealed from birth. His father, Shinmen Musashi, was a feared swordsman, but he was also cold, distant, and harsh. For him, strength was everything, and weakness was unforgivable. At just 7 years old, Musashi's life changed forever. Some say his father abandoned him. Others believe his mother died, leaving him alone in a cruel world. Left to fend for himself, he grew up wild, like a stray wolf. His only teacher was nature. His only rule, survive, no matter what. But fate had other plans. A Buddhist monk took him in, offering shelter and wisdom. Yet Musashi was restless. He didn't seek peace. He sought purpose. He trained his body. He read the ancient texts, but deep inside, the fire of a warrior burned. The temple walls couldn't contain him forever. By the time he reached his teens, Musashi had made his choice. He left the temple behind, stepping into a world that demanded strength and cunning. With no master, no family, and no name known to the world, he set out on a journey that would forge his destiny. From an abandoned boy to a man of unbreakable will. Before he became a master, he was just another lost soul. But Musashi's story isn't about where he started. It's about how he refused to stay there. And this was just the beginning of Miyamoto Musashi's journey. From a child abandoned to a man of unbreakable will, Musashi wandered Japan seeking mastery. But true mastery is tested in battle, and one duel would define his legend forever. By 1612, Musashi had already defeated dozens of warriors, but his greatest challenge came when he faced Sasaki Kojiro, a master swordsman feared across Japan. The duel was set on a lonely island, Ganryu Island. The stakes, life or death, and everyone expected Musashi to lose. Musashi arrived late, deliberately. His opponent waited, sword drawn, seething with anger. But Musashi wasn't just late. He was prepared. His weapon? A wooden sword, longer than any blade ever seen. The moment the duel began, Kojiro struck first, his blade slicing through the air like lightning. But Musashi had studied him. He knew Kojiro's speed and turned it against him. With one devastating strike, Musashi's wooden sword crashed down on Kojiro's skull. Silence. Then, it was over. Musashi didn't wait for victory cheers. He simply turned and walked away, leaving behind his greatest rival, and his own past as a wandering duelist. After this duel, Musashi never fought with a sword again. He had proven his mastery. From that day forward, he became something more than a warrior. He became a legend. His story is not just about combat. It's about strategy, discipline, and knowing when to fight, and when to walk away. This was Musashi's most legendary duel, but it was only part of his story. He had won his greatest duel. He had defeated Sasaki Kojiro. But what happens after a warrior has nothing left to fight for? Miyamoto Musashi had spent his life in battle, over 60 duels, countless victories, and now, silence. The world saw him as invincible. But in his heart, a question remained. What now? For the first time, Musashi stepped away from the path of the sword. He traveled across Japan, not as a fighter, but as a seeker. He studied Zen Buddhism, calligraphy, and the way of the brush. The warrior became an artist, his sword replaced by ink and paper. But Musashi's greatest work was not a painting. It was knowledge. He began writing down everything he had learned about combat, life, and strategy. Near the end of his life, Musashi retreated to a remote cave, Reigando. Here, in complete solitude, he sought his final understanding of the world. His final days were not spent in battle, but in reflection. He wrote his last teachings, Dokodo, the way of walking alone, 21 rules for life and mastery. In 1645, at the age of 61, Miyamoto Musashi took his last breath. He died not with a sword in hand, but with wisdom in his heart. His students buried him standing upright, sword at his side, forever a warrior, even in death. Miyamoto Musashi's legacy is not just in battles won. It is in the lessons he left behind, lessons of discipline, strategy, and self-mastery. He walked away from the sword, but his influence never faded. His story is proof that the greatest warriors are not those who never lose, but those who continue to grow. Before he died, Miyamoto Musashi left behind his greatest weapon, not a sword, but knowledge. A book that reveals the way to mastery, not just in combat, but in life itself. For centuries, warriors, strategists, and leaders have studied his teachings. But what exactly did Musashi write in this book, and how can it change the way you think? Know the way broadly, and you will see it in all things. Musashi believed that before you master anything, you must master the foundations. Discipline is the root of all mastery. Whether it's sword fighting, business, or art, perfection starts with repetition. Be like water. Musashi taught that a warrior must be fluid, able to shift and change like the current of a river. The lesson: stiffness leads to defeat. Adaptation leads to victory. Timing is everything. Musashi believed that in battle, hesitation means death. In life, hesitation means missed opportunities. Success belongs to those who act when the time is right. You don't wait for the perfect moment. You create it. Understand your enemy and you will never fear battle. Musashi studied every style, every technique, not just his own. The greatest strength is not brute force, it's knowledge. The way is in the mind. The final way. Lesson is the hardest to grasp. True mastery is not just physical. It is mental, emotional, and spiritual.